Hey people, what's up? Hart here. I am still alive and I'm back. First of all, I just want to say thank you to all of you kind souls out there who reached out to me over the past few months to make sure I was still alive. I was really kind of overwhelmed with the amount of messages I received, just making sure that I was okay and asking when I would be back. And honestly, I started off as taking a small break from content creation just to avoid burnout, and it kind of spiraled into a longer vacation than I planned. But yeah, I am back now, and hopefully I will be creating content on a regular basis again. So I'm feeling the October vibes today. It's almost Halloween, and I was watching a classic horror movie called The Thing by John Carpenter, and it's a kind of creepy sci-fi horror movie, and it inspired me to make a synthwavy type beat. I don't really know if this is synthwave or not. You all should know by now that I'm really bad at like labeling genres because most of the music I make kind of mashes a bunch of different things together. But anyway, there's some cool stuff in this one, and hopefully you enjoy. So let's go ahead and hop into Ableton and make this from scratch. Okay, so I have my BPM set at 97 for this one, and I'm going to be working in F sharp minor. So I have that global scale set up here, which is really handy if you're working with the piano roll in Ableton. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with some really simple drums. So I have a kick channel here, and I have a just pretty standard 707 kick on it. Sounds like that. So I'm just going to come in here, select basically one beat, which is like that, Control Shift M to add that MIDI clip, and I'm just going to come to C3 and drop that on there. And now I can just drag this so it's on every quarter note. And next I'm just going to add a snare on every 2 and 4. So it's pretty standard stuff so far. The next thing I'm going to work on is a bass, and usually I don't start with bass, so this is kind of a different approach. So you'll notice that I'm kind of going between the root of a chord and the fifth. So this is the root and fifth of the F sharp minor chord, the root and fifth of the D, and the root and fifth of that E. So that's an easy way to kind of make your chord progression at the same time if you'd like. If you have a hard time coming up with chords, is to start with your bass notes and kind of work it in that way. So I want this to be a pretty chunky sounding kind of ominous bass. So I'm just going to drag this decay down just so it's more of a little bit of a pluck than a fully sustained bass. That'll help you with mixing too. I'm going to go ahead and add this second oscillator in here to FM that. Let's take the coarse down to 0.5. Okay, so that sounds pretty good so far. I'm going to come in here to the filter section, and I'm just going to drop the filter back a little bit because I want this to be a little bit dark, and of course we'll add an auto filter after this too, and that'll help. I'm going to come down here to the time section as well. Really important when you're making a bass, change the voices to 1. And then I also want to come into this pitch envelope section here, turn on the glide. So I went ahead and added an effects chain to this bass. So this is what we started with just operator. So I went ahead and added drum bus, which is very clearly adding a lot of volume, but it's also adding some nice harmonics and crunch in there. So let's just take the volume down a little bit. We added roar. And I love this poly shaper, especially for basses. So what I did, I took the tone down a little bit, and what this does is it kind of shaves off a little bit of the high end, and came in here to the modulation sources in roar and went to the envelope section and basically mapped that to the amount here. And it's also mapped to the drive as well. So every time it hits, it's just giving it a little bit extra. Got glue compressor just to kind of catch that initial transient. And an EQ8 here just to kind of keep this in line, make sure it doesn't get too high in there, and boosting just a little bit here. Okay, so next I want to work on the ARP that's going to play throughout most of the track. And I found a sample on Splice that I actually really like. Don't come for me with your pitchforks quite yet. So, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this in to an audio track. And this is what the ARP sounds like just by itself. So I like the general idea, I like the notes, I like the vibe, but I don't like the sound, and I also don't like how busy it is. So I want to be able to kind of manipulate this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click this, and I'm going to convert melody to new MIDI track. So basically Ableton is going to take this audio and transform it into MIDI. Sometimes it's not right on, but sometimes it's pretty good. So let's see what it gave. Let's see what it gave us. Okay, so the MIDI I think is good. The sound is still not good. So let's go ahead and delete the original audio. And I'm going to go ahead and I have wavetable loaded on this. So let's go ahead and drag that MIDI clip down to here. And let's go ahead and work on a sound design that'll sound better than this. So basically what I'm doing is just changing this to a square wave, dragging the frequency back on this so it's not as harsh, and then changing this to more of a pluck envelope here. So now what I want to do is add a second oscillator, because the fun thing about this is, of course, you can modulate this to open and close, which is a great way to add or decrease energy throughout your track. So I'm going to come into, let's see, let's find something good here. So this one sounds pretty nice. And really what that's going to do is just add some interesting top end whenever this filter is going to open. So I'm actually going to attach an LFO to this just to make that move around like that, give it just a little bit more interest, maybe a slower LFO. So let's come into the matrix, and it is this option here, oscillator 2 position. So let's go ahead and attach LFO1 to that. Let's go ahead and turn off the retrigger so it's just kind of freely going up and down. So I want to go ahead and map this amplitude envelope to the frequency so that it's kind of opening and closing with it. So I'm going to come into the matrix here. I want to map this to the amplitude. So let's go ahead and do that. Starting to sound like a proper pluck now. Let's go ahead and add some unison as well. I really love this shimmer. Drag the voices way up to like 7. And I'm just going to put echo on here as well. So this is the wavetable by itself. We're going to add echo. That is definitely too much, so let's dial that back somewhere like this. Take the feedback down. Add some reverb to the echoes. Change it to ping pong. And let's also turn on this filter down here. So basically this is going to filter out the echoes from any of the low end and any of the really high end. All right, next let's go ahead and add some chords. So basically I started with this F sharp minor triad, and then we have the 9th, which is that G sharp added up here, and we're just duplicating that 3rd at the top. And then I moved this F sharp up to here, and again, if you don't know that one, you can hold shift and the up and down arrow to move things up or down an octave. So this is basically just an inversion of that F sharp minor chord. Here we have, again, an inversion of the D major chord, and we're adding, again, that 9th in there. And this last chord, we kind of have the G sharp happening here, except it's that diminished chord. So take the 5th down, 1 semitone, and we turn it into that. Okay, so let's go ahead and do some basic sound design for these chords. So I'm going to start with by changing this to dual basic shapes, and let's actually turn off the second oscillator so we can actually hear what we're doing with this one. So I'm going to drag the shape up, and basically what this does is you start at sine wave, and it'll cycle through all the way up to square wave. So somewhere I think about 69 is saw wave. We'll leave the D tune alone. Let's turn on the second oscillator, and I'm going to change it to the noisy shapes, which is one of my favorites inside of Meld. And let's take this maybe like somewhere to here, take that up to like there. And this noisy shapes just has like a really nice kind of fuzziness to it. I'm going to add some spread on here. Stack 2. And add just a tiny bit of drive. So now I'm going to come into the LFO section. I'm just going to take LFO 1 here and take the rate to maybe somewhere about there. And I'm going to come into Meld's mapping options here in the matrix and map that LFO 1 to the D tune on both. So just a tiny, tiny bit will do a lot for you. So maybe like that. And I'm going to copy to B, so that populated the same thing over here too. And let's go ahead and drop a phaser in there as well. Kind of gives it that spacey feel. Let's up the notches to maybe like 8. Drag the center down just a little bit. Increase the rate a little bit. Up the feedback. Okay, so these chords are pretty boring just by themselves like this. So what I want to do is add some automation with this auto filter. So I'm going to click on this and you hit A, that brings you into automation mode. And so what I want to do is kind of have these do like a slow build and kind of drop back out. Start maybe around there. Let's add a point here. We're going to have it come up and back down, and basically kind of that same idea. Let's just see how that sounds. So something like that, and of course you can come in here and fine tune this all you want. If you hold Alt, you get this nice little arrow, so you can actually kind of make it even more dramatic. It's actually really nice. Okay, the last thing I want to create is some sort of lead instrument that's going to come in kind of between the ARP, because the ARP and the lead are kind of going to go back and forth as the melodic ideas of this track. So for this lead, I'm thinking something like similar to like a theremin sound, which is kind of that spooky sound you hear where it has like a ton of vibrato. So I'm going to start with just the basic shapes. Drag this up to about somewhere around here. And take this tone up. And I'm going to do the same thing here. And let's link those envelopes again. Okay, next I want to come in here and change this from poly to mono. And let's come into the settings real quick. And let's just turn that portamento on. Maybe about like somewhere like that would be fine. So you kind of hear that glide between the notes. Okay, so let's take LFO 1 here. And I want something kind of fast. So I'm going to change this so it's synced to our time clock. And maybe like 1/24th. And let's go ahead and map that to the pitch mod. So just again, slight. So maybe like 0.3. Kind of hear that theremin vibe coming through now. Okay, so again, I went through and just added an effects chain. So this is what we have just with Meld. I'm going to add a roar. So basically, I'm adding 3 dB of drive, the noise shaper option down here, or noise injection, about 33%. And then I'm also adding echo. Really, really nice. And a little bit of the hybrid reverb. And this is set all the way, the blend is all the way to this side. So we're using that dark hall algorithm. And again, don't forget, if you're using hybrid reverb, it has a really nice EQ section in here so you can damp some of those highs if you want, cut out the lows. And it's just really easy to use. And before we start arranging, I just want to finish off the drums. Again, like I said, they're really simple drums. Instead of a simple like hi-hat, I found this kind of click percussion that I think really will fit with the vibe. So as usual, I like to keep things really simple, and I think this is a good base to start arranging. So let me go ahead and arrange the track, and then I will share with you some of the tips and the automation and all the stuff that I'm going to put in here. Okay, so this is what the whole track ended up looking like. So let's kind of just go through this, and I'm just going to play it for you and kind of explain some things as it's happening, because I feel like that's easier. So just starting with the drums, the kick, that click, and the arp down here. And you can see if I open the automation, I have that filter gradually opening, so you'll hear it kind of get more bright as it gets toward the drop. Bass, same thing, that filter is automated to come in there. Down here, we just have some wind for some extra kind of ambient noise. This same exact chords is here, just one note with the filter opening up. Drop into that main idea with the chords, filter opening up and closing to kind of give them some movement. Get a little break in the drums here, and then a little kind of reverse hat. And you'll see the arp is going to drop out here in just a sec. I have that echo on a send automated to kind of drown it out. And then just repeating those notes. And now that that arp is missing, we can bring in our lead instrument here. Here, you got everything grouped into a drum bus, and you're going to see that I have an auto filter that's going to sweep everything out into this kind of drop.
I'm going to hide this tape when I'm finished. If none of us make it, at least there'll be some kind of record.
This is actually a vocal from the movie The Thing.
Nobody trusts anybody now. We're all very tired. There's nothing else I can do. Just wait.
So that's basically the whole track, and we just come back to that main idea. So real quick, a few things that are new here. So I did add these transitions, and this one sounds pretty cool. Basically, it's just a reversed hi-hat, and what I did was come in here, and you can now automate grain size. So what I did was just, you go to the envelope section in your audio clip, and you can go to grain size, and you'll see that I basically have it set to slowly drop down. So that's a cool effect. Just added some simple impacts here. And then this is titled ARP Reverse, which is exactly what it is. Basically, I resampled the ARP that I have into audio and reversed it. So, see if I hit R, sounds just like it. So R just reverses it. Kind of just gave it that creepy feeling to lead back into the main section again. And that's pretty much everything that went into this track. If you enjoyed, if you learned anything, please do remember to hit that like button, leave me a comment, remind the YouTube algorithm that I'm still alive, and I will be posting again regularly. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.